Every man and every woman is a star. Every mountain, every drop in the ocean, every living creature is made from space dust. Hundreds of tons of space dust fall on planet Earth every day. When we look at the stars, we are looking at the material which we are all made of. There are millions of galaxies in the universe, and each galaxy contains billions of stars. Many of the stars have planets. Since the dawn of mankind, the elite have lied to us. Knowledge of space was knowledge of power over mankind. By watching the stars and planets, the elite knew when the seasons would come, when the moon would eclipse the sun, when the tides would ebb and flow, when the summer would start and winter would end. Watching the sky made you wise and powerful. When the first telescopes were invented, the elite suppressed their existence and imprisoned anyone who wanted to bring knowledge of the infinite universe to mankind. The first grand lie was that planet Earth was flat. The next lie was that no other intelligent beings live in the universe. We now know that all this is lies. The most important truth is that the universe is like the ocean. It is teeming with life. Life will get a grip wherever it can. Life will evolve into any form and shape it can. Through all the centuries of lies, remember this. Your ancestors gave us a warning that mankind has been invaded by aliens many times in the past and will be invaded again in the future.
April 2003, American troops go to the National Museum of Iraq in Baghdad, and they set explosives and they blast the doors of the museum off its hinges. I heard those reports and I thought, well, this is just obviously a continuation of what was going on during the Desert Storm invasion of Iraq that was perpetrated by George Bush Sr. And now we know that there's George Bush Jr. blowing the doors off of the National Museum. So what's taken? Well, surprise, surprise. Thousands of objects are taken, and they mostly come from the Assyrian, Babylonian and Sumerian kingdoms of ancient Iraq. Some of these items are to do with the legends, the history, the Sumerian histories of the gods who came from the stars, and they have become known as the Anunnaki. $2 billion a week is being spent by the American military forces, by George Bush Jr. And it's not just museums that are being looted. Archaeological sites have been bulldozed by American military forces. What military advantage there is to bulldozing a site, I'm not sure. Obviously, there is no military objective. There is no military objective to shooting dead an old lady who's gone out one morning to buy a loaf of bread. There's no military objective whatsoever in opening fire on a market full of people selling goats. There's no military objective whatsoever in bombing children. Now, I wanted to make this film 8 years ago, and I've got lots of friends who write books about UFOs and extraterrestrials. When I told them, you know, my idea for this film, the full idea, lots of them said, for God's sake, don't make that film, because, you know, you're mixing up, you know, the war in Iraq with extraterrestrials, and, you know, people aren't going to see the connection. It's going to be a very, very difficult film. So Secret Space Volume 1, which is what I made in 2005, should have been Volume 2, and this film should have been Volume 1. But basically my conviction of 8 years ago has become stronger and stronger as I've seen events unfold in Iraq. There is wholesale tracking down of people going on in Iraq by American military forces under the command of George Bush. People are being systematically hunted down, and they're being tortured and then killed. If they're really lucky, they'll just be killed.
Wounded, another Iraqi writhes on the ground. The Marines kill him, then cheer.
Like, man, these guys are dead now, you know? But it was a good feeling. And afterwards, you're like, hell yeah, that was awesome. Let's do it again.
I've heard one report of a gentleman who was working at a local garage. Walking home from work one day, he was asked for his identity papers by an American military officer. And while he was looking in his pockets for his identity papers, the officer took out a sword. It's the first I've known that swords are being issued by the American military. And they cut his head off. This does not fit into any kind of pattern at all until you realise that they are deliberately hunting down and trying to kill certain people in Iraq because, and this is what I believe, there are the odd remnants of a bloodline that goes back to the Sumerian kingdom. And I believe that certain people, unbeknown even to those people, have within their genetic makeup remnants of a bloodline that was mixed long ago, 6,000, 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 years ago, with the genetic material from invading star gods. And the American military are doing their damnedest at the moment to hunt down these people and kill them, and to erase them, and therefore erase the remnants of this bloodline. Just 6 miles of atmosphere separate mankind from outer space. Roger Bannister, the man who ran the 4-minute mile, could run that distance in just 24 minutes. A rocket can travel the 6 miles from the surface of our planet into space in just 5 minutes. Once in space, everything is different. With no atmosphere, the human eye can see for literally hundreds of millions of miles. Space is not an empty vacuum. 99% of all matter exists in space. It's invisible and is called dark matter. The space around planet Earth is full of invisible radio waves. The signals from our television, radio and telephone networks travel very fast in space. Every month, planet Earth sends out 1 trillion individual radio broadcasts, which reach the planet Saturn within 11 days of leaving the surface of planet Earth. For the last 30 years, mankind has been sending small probes into space. The oldest of these probes, Voyager 1, Voyager 2 and the Pioneer probes, were launched 30 years ago and have now left the solar system. The Pioneer and Voyager probes are fitted with a gold plaque which contains a map of how to find planet Earth, a diagram of what we look like, and an audio recording from Secretary General of the United Nations, an ex-Nazi called Kurt Waldheim. This film is about the scientists and government agencies who have, throughout the ages, kept a very big secret from mankind. For the first time on film, we expose the cosmic conspiracy against mankind, the conspiracy of silence led by NASA, which keeps us all living in ignorance of the greatest revelation in human history, that we, mankind, are not alone in the universe, that within our own galaxy, thousands of life forms exist, which, like us, have the ability to build and fly craft which can travel from one planet to the other. This is the untold story of archaeologists, astronomers, astronauts, and scientists who have been airbrushed out of history because they told the truth. The truth is that planet Earth has been invaded by aliens many times in the past. Rock art preserved from thousands of years ago clearly show aliens interacting with humans and animals. Ancient legends from the Himalayas, Middle East, and Americas say that some aliens were benevolent and taught early man how to make electricity. Some aliens were neutral and just observed us. Our biblical forefathers called them the Watchers, and the hybrid human-alien offspring were called the Nephilim. Shall be called evil spirits when they come to live on earth. Evil spirits shall exude from their flesh, because they were created from a mixture of mankind and the Watchers who fly above. Himalayan legends tell of flying craft which exterminated whole regions of planet Earth using atomic weapons. Hostile aliens have invaded Earth many times, causing human civilization to crumble into dust, only to be rebuilt over thousands of years. We are not alone. We have never been alone. Having been accused of planning the 9/11 terror attacks as an inside job, and having been exposed as a long-time member of the Skull and Bones secret society with macabre rituals, George W. Bush's popularity fell to an all-time low prior to the 2004 presidential election. Bush staged a grand photo opportunity at NASA, using the American space program as a grand charade, making a speech from NASA headquarters about the future exploration of space. But the speech by George W. Bush is not about the exploration of space. It is more about the exploitation of space. the US government has weaponized space. In December 2006, Nexus magazine republished news reports which claimed that communist Chinese satellites had fired laser beams at satellites owned by the American government. Star Wars are happening right now. There are thousands of satellites in orbit. Many contain small nuclear reactors. When one of these nuclear-powered satellites falls back to Earth, it is like a silent H-bomb, depositing radioactive dust into the atmosphere. Just 1 pound of plutonium dust deposited into the Earth's atmosphere would kill all living creatures and plant life on the face of the planet. The US government presently has nearly 50 pounds of plutonium orbiting planet Earth in a range of military satellites. Shortly before his death, retired Pentagon officer Colonel Philip Corso wrote a book called The Day After Roswell. In this astounding book, he claimed that the Star Wars weapon system was placed in orbit to repel alien invaders.
For more than 50 years, the war against UFOs has continued as we try to defend ourselves against intrusion. The Hughes Hunter killer satellites of the 1970s were our first steps in deploying a planetary defense system that held any threat to be aliens. The US military has better, more accurate, and more powerful weapons for killing UFOs than were deployed in the movie Independence Day.
Before he became president, Jimmy Carter made an official UFO report, saying that he had personally witnessed a UFO the size of the moon. During the Carter presidency, the CIA and FBI came under pressure from UFO investigators and the Carter administration to reveal what they knew about the UFO phenomenon. At first, the CIA denied ever having kept documents about UFOs. But during the Carter administration, Freedom of Information Act requests from UFO research groups forced the CIA to publish an embarrassing list of documents. Thousands of pages of investigations into the UFO phenomenon were finally made available to the public. At the same time, the FBI were forced to admit that not only had they kept UFO reports on file, but they had actively tapped the phones and secretly searched the homes of people who claimed they had been abducted by aliens. Of all the government agencies who have been deliberately silent regarding the possibility of aliens visiting planet Earth, it is the National Aeronautical and Space Administration, NASA, which has steadfastly refused to admit that they are actively involved in UFO research. However, we now know that NASA are actively involved in UFO research. More than 20 space shuttle missions have returned from space with video footage of unidentified flying objects. On every occasion, NASA have claimed that UFOs filmed by NASA astronauts are nothing more than ice particles and debris floating in space. However, since the 1950s, more than 15 NASA astronauts have reported UFOs to mission control. On March the 14th, 1989, amateur radio enthusiasts recorded a transmission on a secret NASA frequency from Space Shuttle pilot John Blah.
Houston, this is Discovery. We still have the alien spacecraft under appearance.
NASA have been caught red-handed on many occasions. NASA have refused to admit they are actively monitoring the presence of aliens. Now, for the first time on film, we reveal documents from NASA archives which plainly show that NASA is most certainly involved in UFO and alien research. We prove, using actual NASA documents, that not only do NASA scientists believe that aliens are visiting planet Earth, but that NASA have funded studies to research UFOs on the Moon. For all the success and spin put on the Apollo moon missions in the late 1960s, NASA has never fully answered the question, why have they never returned to the moon? Some ex-NASA employees know the answer, and that is that the moon is crawling with aliens. And that NASA astronauts confirmed this in the 1970s, leading many UFO researchers to conclude that NASA had been warned off ever returning to the lunar surface. UFO activity on the moon was nothing new to the ex-Nazis who engineered the Apollo moon missions. For centuries, astronomers all over the world, including Nazi Germany, had been reporting UFOs flying over the lunar surface. The Lunar Anomalies Report was commissioned by NASA in the years preceding the famous Apollo missions in the late 1960s. For more than 3 years, NASA financed several research scientists to collate a catalogue of anomalous lights which had been reported on the lunar surface by leading astronomers and scientists since the Elizabethan era. In 1968, the public version of the NASA research was published under the title Document R277. This public version of NASA's survey of lunar UFOs included nearly 600 strange events which took place between the years 1540 and 1967. This official NASA catalogue of strange lunar UFOs included reports from some of the world's most famous astronomers. For example, NASA included a report from the brilliant French astronomer Gian Cassini, who reported seeing a white cloud hovering over the lunar surface in 1671. Another report suggested that the moon had an atmosphere when 2 astronomers reported lightning above the lunar surface on May the 18th, 1787. Just 1 month before, in the same year, 1787, the man who discovered Uranus, one of the pioneers of modern astronomy, Sir Frederick William Herschel, claimed to have observed several bright lights traversing across the lunar surface. Small luminous orbs of light, commonly referred to as luminosities, have been reported on more than 200 occasions. In February 1877, a streak of white light was observed for more than 1 hour. On April the 23rd, 1915, a beam of light was seen inside the Clavius crater. One of the UFO hotspots on the lunar surface is the Plato crater, where literally dozens of luminous orbs of light have been reported by astronomers. In addition to luminous UFOs on the lunar surface, NASA recorded the existence of mysterious shadows. In 1882, near the Aristotle area of the lunar surface, several dark shadows were seen. On September the 13th, 1959, astronomers were unable to photograph the lithosphere area of the lunar surface due to a large dark mass obscuring the terrain. And on September the 11th, 1967, Canadian astronomers reported a black cloud with violet edges floating across the Sea of Tranquility, the exact area chosen by NASA for the first Apollo moon landing in 1969. previous to the publication of the anomalous lunar report. In 1965, NASA launched Operation Moonblink, a project involving top observatories all over planet Earth. NASA's goal was to collect data on the large number of luminosities seen flying over the lunar surface. Operation Moonblink also investigated various large structures which had been photographed by unmanned NASA satellites. Some of these structures looked suspiciously artificial. In 1953, the science editor of the New York Herald Tribune had reported seeing a 12-mile-long structure, possibly a bridge, on the edge of the Mare Crisium crater. This structure could have been caused by volcanic activity. British astronomers Dr. H.P. Wilkins and the presenter of the world's longest-running TV series, The Sky at Night, Sir Patrick Moore, both confessed that the so-called bridge in the Mare Crisium crater had just popped up from nowhere. In preparation for the NASA Apollo moon missions, Orbiter 3 was dispatched to take photographs of some of the moon's most interesting structures. In the Eucurt area of the moon, a large vertical structure stands proud of the lunar surface. It has been nicknamed the Shard. Another curious object photographed by Orbiter 3 is the so-called tower, which some astronomers claim is over a mile thick and could be 5 miles high. After looking carefully through hundreds of NASA photos returned to Earth by Orbiter 3 and its predecessor, Orbiter 2, American author George Leonard published a book called Somebody Else is on the Moon. George Leonard presented many photos in his book, some showing very long tracks in the lunar dust, tracks which he said had been made by aliens. Sightings of UFOs flying across the lunar surface are still going on to this day. In Japan, amateur astronomers have videotaped spherical luminosities using celestron telescopes. NASA's investment in studying UFOs on the moon was money well spent. Two ex-NASA mission specialists exposed in the 1970s that NASA astronauts had informed mission control that they had seen alien spaceships on the lunar surface. In 1976, an ex-NASA employee, Otto Binder, accused NASA of censoring transmissions from the Apollo astronauts by switching to secret radio frequencies and using code names for UFOs. Otto Binder claimed that he had heard an Apollo astronaut tell Mission Control that there were huge alien spaceships parked on the lunar surface, right in the middle of the Sea of Tranquility, which had been chosen as the landing site for Apollo 11.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Few people took Otto Binder's account seriously, until another ex-NASA employee, a Moroccan named Maurice Chatelain, published a book in 1978 in which he claimed that two UFOs hovered above the Sea of Tranquility just before the historic moonwalk of Neil Armstrong. Maurice Chatelain was a NASA insider. He invented many of the radio and radar communication systems for the Apollo missions. He had 11 patents awarded for his inventions and had a high-level NASA security clearance, able to talk freely with senior NASA officials. In his book, he quoted radio transmissions between Apollo astronauts and Mission Control. According to Maurice Chatelain, the astronauts informed NASA that there were alien spacecraft lined up on the far side of a nearby crater, observing the historic moonwalk of Neil Armstrong. During his time working on the Apollo space program, Chatelain learnt that aliens not only exist, but that they have had a major role in shaping, and in some cases destroying, civilization. The title of Maurice Chatelain's book proves he was in no doubt that aliens had invaded planet Earth in the past. If you study the legends of the North American shamans, the mythologies of ancient Europe, the creation histories of the Australian Aborigines, or the ancient Vedic texts of India, and especially the Sumerian clay tablets from ancient Iraq, we find that all great civilizations on the face of planet Earth tell one similar story. That is, in the distant past, people from the stars visited planet Earth and displayed fantastic technology. Sometimes they genetically engineered humans. Sometimes they directly interbred with humans. These so-called sky gods always visited in spectacular flying vehicles.
And the watchers from the sky saw the daughter of men were beautiful, and they bred with them. and the children were giants, who become rulers, not of human flesh. They were called the Nephilim.
The most ancient written texts on planet Earth date from the Indus Valley and make up a corpus of works called the Vedas. The Bhagavad Gita is an ancient Hindu text which is at least 5,000 years old. This epic mythology inspired the character known as Darth Vader in the Star Wars movies. The Bhagavad Gita described many gods of the stars flying down to planet Earth in alien spacecraft called Vimanas. The ancient Vedas tell us that there are multiple inhabited planetary systems in the universe called Devas, which are ruled by a universal government of beings with superhuman powers and technology, including the power of telepathy and nuclear weapons powerful enough to destroy an entire planet. The Hindu legends tell us that the Vimanas were like flying saucers, which had stealth technology, able to make themselves invisible, and were able to detect enemy craft at great distances using a form of psychometric radar. The most ancient text of Central America is the Popol Vuh, written by the Mayans, who charted the heavens and had astronomical calendars which predicted solar and lunar eclipses. The Popol Vuh describes the ancestors of the Mayans as great explorers who knew centuries before European scientists that the Earth was not flat, but in actual fact a sphere. The Popol Vuh mentions a great god-king called Quetzalcoatl, who is depicted as a flying serpent. On more than 3 different occasions, in broad daylight, people have filmed flying serpents in the skies above Mexico. The same phenomena has also been filmed in Scotland, and also from aboard the space shuttle by veteran astronaut Story Musgrave. These flying serpents have often been seen surrounded by spherical UFOs, which are often metallic in appearance. Mexican UFO investigators call these spherical luminosities las perlas, or the pearls. These pearls of the sky are mentioned in ancient Tibetan scriptures. More than one leading Tibetan author suspects that these spherical UFOs are actually alien probes monitoring the evolution of mankind. These small spherical UFOs, which are the most common type of UFO filmed in the skies worldwide, are described in the ancient Buddhist text known as the Cantua. The Cantua describes the exact same spherical UFO phenomena which has been filmed in the skies above London, in Scotland, the south of France, and also many times in Mexico. According to self-styled Tibetan mystic and British author Cyril Hoskin, Tibetan Lama Mingya Dondo told disciples that a group of Tibetan lamas had established communication with space gods who said that they were watching Earth in the same way as humans watch animals in a zoo. A royal document dating back to the 7th century states that the first 7 Tibetan kings came from the stars.
Medieval art is full of UFOs. Some are seen beaming lasers directly into the minds of people. Medieval artists associated the occupants of UFOs with the world of God. Jesus is pictured in many paintings where alien craft can clearly be seen hovering in the background. Medieval painters used their art as a way of giving people the message that UFOs exist and that aliens have been involved in controlling the destiny of mankind. There are even medieval paintings clearly showing satellites and other forms of technology. British author Matthew Hurley has collected dozens of pieces of ancient art which all show UFOs and aliens. In addition to dozens of paintings, there are also hand-printed newsletters from the medieval era which report UFOs, luminous balls of light, and even an alien invasion in the Mediterranean. According to a medieval manuscript, in 1608, reptilian aliens landed on the shores of Genoa and Nice, causing panic and fear amongst the inhabitants. The manuscript is a news report entitled "Frightening Screaming and Signs from the Sea at Genoa."
In the month of August 1608, couriers of celestial pestilence appeared, foretelling the tragic invasion to come. Romans made sacrifices to the gods on seeing them arrive. Horrible beings with arms covered in scales, with snakes wrapped around their arms, emerged from the sea, screeching and screaming. In the city of Nice, it rained blood. Carriages of fire were seen in the sky, being pulled by the frightening creatures. Some had the body of a man, some had bodies of women, and they had heads shaped like dragons.
Genoa was the hometown of Christopher Columbus. On October the 11th, 1492, whilst halfway across the Atlantic on his voyage to discover America, Columbus saw a UFO and recorded the event in his ship's log. At the same time Columbus recorded a UFO hovering above the Atlantic Sea, the Aztec civilization of Central America carved figurines of men with reptilian bodies. More than 60% of respondents to a 1997 CNN poll said they believe aliens have contacted humans. Approximately 50% said they think aliens have abducted humans. And 80% believe the government is hiding something about alien contact.
In the 1970s, the skeptical magazine Fortean Times claimed a man had faked an archaeological artifact which had supposedly been discovered in Nepal. The famous Lolodov plate is meant to be nearly 9,000 years old and shows a disc-shaped craft with a small alien-type creature standing beside it. This controversial item is either a fake or one of the most obvious warnings from the past that aliens have visited the Himalayas. On the opposite border of Tibet stands the Bayankara Ula mountain range, which separates Tibet from communist China. There, small skeletons with oversized skulls have been found. The tribes in the Bayan Mountains have a detailed mythology involving star beings crash-landing spaceships in the distant past. Chinese archaeologist Chi Pu Tei conducted an expedition to the area in 1938 and discovered caves which had carved pictograms showing star charts, the moon and the earth with dotted lines showing the orbits of planets. Jade figurines have been found in this area, which display a remarkable similarity to the grey aliens reported worldwide by millions of people. The small skeletons with alien-shaped skulls were discovered in 1938. The skeletons were in graves on the floor of caves, which had walls covered in star map pictograms. The graves were laid out in geometric lines. Amongst these graves, hundreds of circular stone plates were discovered, which had spiral etchings on them. Each stone disc was approximately 9 inches in diameter and had a fine groove spiraling out from the center to the rim, making each disc look like a prehistoric version of a modern vinyl record. In all, 716 stone plates were found. These became known as the Dropa stones. In 1962, Professor Sun Nui at the Academy for Prehistoric Research in Peking translated the engravings on the Dropa stones. The history of local tribes were inscribed on the Dropa stones, which claimed that 12,000 years ago, aliens crash-landed in the Bayan mountain range. This was apparently one of the least successful alien invasions, as, according to the Dropa stone legend, the aliens were killed by local villagers because of their non-human appearance. Ancient Aboriginal rock art shows many examples of alien-type beings which are known as Wanjinas. Every year, Aboriginal tribespeople travel to remote parts of Western Australia and repaint the outline of the Wanjinas, who are known as the creator spirits of the Aborigines. By repainting the figures, Aborigines are making sure the memory of these Wanjina creatures are never forgotten. Well, I had some copies made of some of the most important pieces of rock art from around the world, and this is a copy of a piece of rock art that was discovered by a chap called Joseph Bradshaw in the 1800s. And the Bradshaw Foundation has done really excellent work in finding, collating and protecting a lot of the rock art in Western Australia. And this piece of rock art has been reproduced in several books, most recently a book by Terry Wilson called The Secret History of Crop Circles. And this is a kind of facsimile copy. It makes it obviously a lot easier to look at the different elements when it's been copied into a painting like this. I suppose the most striking feature is this, what can only be described as a spaceman. It's obviously got, some kind of space helmet thing there. There's some kind of bulbous point on his head. And then he seems to be looking in the direction of this kind of aeriform shape that seems to be floating in the air. Now, in the centre, you have a shape there that could easily be interpreted as a flying saucer. There's also these round spherical shapes. These are often found, actually, these round spherical motifs are often found in relationship to other motifs that can easily be interpreted as flying saucers. There seems to be some kind of wave pattern there. Obviously, that could be, birds in the distance, but it seems to me that sort of suggests some kind of wave energy. And fleeing from the spaceman and this aeriform and these spheres and this UFO are wallabies or kangaroos. And what's really fascinating is that in the lower right-hand corner, there are two figures, a man and a woman, which do not have Aboriginal facial features. In actual fact, they have European features. And this mirrors exactly what we find on the other side of planet Earth, where we have characters in rock art from, thousands of years ago, centuries and centuries and centuries and centuries ago, with people with European features. Well, in Kimberley in Australia, in the ancient era from where all of this rock art dates from, there should have been no European people at all. And the same thing can be said about Central and South America. In Central and South America, these beings which we find in the ancient art in that particular part of the planet are called the Viracocha. And they were beings who came from the stars and gave the peoples of Central and South America knowledge of mathematics and astronomy and other forms of knowledge. And here in Kimberley, in Western Australia, in an ancient era when there shouldn't have been any European people whatsoever, we again find this kind of theme of European-looking beings. And he has a beard. He has a kind of punky kind of Sex Pistols, Johnny Rotten haircut. The woman has a very strange hair design that looks like some kind of medieval jester's hat, which is very strange. And the look on their faces is that of awe and terror. They're even sort of holding up their hands, either in veneration of this spaceman or in horror of the spaceman. Now, what's really fascinating is that on the ground, below the flying saucer and the spheres, you have a spiral pattern which is quite reminiscent of the spiral groove workings which we find in Ireland and Scotland on lots of the monoliths there. But this spiral pattern seems to be drawn in a kind of perspective way, and I think it suggests that there is a crop circle there. And of course we know that there are many, many pieces of footage of small balls of light actually creating crop circles. And this may be one of the most important pieces of evidence in the whole area of crop circle research. Now, another really very, very interesting point that I find is that the entire scene is encircled by a serpent, by a snake. This is the head of the snake, and it goes all the way around, and his tail is almost being swallowed. Now, the snake, you know, in a lot of books, I collect a hell of a lot of books. Mostly the snake is considered as a symbol of wisdom in the ancient era. And, you know, I thought, well, when I first came across this notion years ago, I thought, well, that's, you know, quite interesting. But, you know, when I look at snakes, and I live in a hot area where there are snakes, they don't particularly strike me as being really, really super intelligent animals. Certainly they have a vindictive kind of survival quality of intelligence, but they don't strike me as being like dolphins, which, you know, when you swim with dolphins, you can really, really tell that they're very, very, very intelligent creatures. And so I did some reading and research into how this notion of the snake representing wisdom and knowledge in the ancient world came about. And my research really led me to, you know, make this film in a way, because what I found is that it wasn't actually snakes that were venerated as being intelligent. It was the reptilian aspect to their being that was associated with reptilian or serpent-like creatures in the legendary histories of planet Earth, characters like Quetzalcoatl in Mexico that brought the civilizations of Central and South America, you know, fantastic knowledge about the stars, and other reptilian beings, such as Nukua, which was a reptilian goddess in ancient China. It was this notion that these reptilian beings that came from the stars, full of knowledge, genetics and science, which then was oversimplified and throughout history came down to the point where the snake represents wisdom of the ancient world. The depiction of people with European facial features in ancient Aboriginal art is mirrored on the opposite side of planet Earth in Peru. Again, we see depictions of bearded European people at a time and a place where no such Europeans should have existed. Nazca in Peru is one of the largest archaeological sites in the world. Thousands of earthworks have been etched into the rock of the Nazca Desert. The summits of entire mountains have been scraped away to make space for parallel lines and giant pictograms of creatures which can only be seen from the air. Skeletons with elongated skulls, like a grey alien, have been found near Nazca. World-famous author Eric von Daniken has made a detailed study of the Nazca area. He has visited local people who have private collections of stone figurines which show detailed depictions of heart surgery and European-type men using what appear to be telescopes. Thousands of these ancient stone figurines have been found and are thought to be at least 3,000 years old. Time and time again, people who have been abducted by aliens claim that they received telepathic messages from these beings. Many people claim that the Greys are a telepathic species who do not speak, but prefer to transfer thoughts containing colours and symbols with the power of their minds. In Kimberley, Western Australia, Wangina-type figures have been found which have halos, and some even have antennas coming from their heads. The halos and antennas could be a symbolic representation of the power of telepathy. Again, mirrored on the far side of planet Earth, thousands of miles from Australia, we see the same type of alien creatures with antennas depicted on rock art. These alien figures were carved onto the rocks thousands of years ago and are known as the antenna people. Some authors have interpreted the mythologies of ancient Greece to infer that aliens from another world invaded and gave mankind the secrets to mathematics and astronomy. Greek mythology is full of strange alien-type creatures and beings with supernatural powers and advanced technology. In 1900, the wreck of an ancient ship was found off the coast of Crete near the island of Antikythera. Divers found lumps of corroded bronze and took their find to Spiridon Staius, at the National Archaeological Museum in Athens. Spiridon Staius discovered a complex and elegantly made mechanism, like the interior of an expensive handmade clock, inside the corroded lumps of bronze. In 1902, he proclaimed the object to be thousands of years old and called it the Antikythera mechanism. In 1958, British scientist Dr. Derek de Soya Price studied the Antikythera mechanism and claimed it was a clockwork computer able to accurately predict the movement of stars and planets. The Antikythera mechanism is likely to have been made in the Hellenistic era of ancient Greece. No other ancient clockwork mechanism can be found in any other museum worldwide. Indeed, there is no mention of clockwork technology being used during this era anywhere on planet Earth. In 1971, the Antikythera mechanism was X-rayed, and scientists were astounded to discover that there were complicated meshing gears, far more advanced and complicated than the clocks which were invented for maritime navigation in the 1500s. Dr. de Soya Price stated that the Antikythera mechanism was so sophisticated and ahead of its time that it was like discovering a jet airliner inside an ancient Egyptian tomb. The mechanism had clearly been owned by someone who kept its existence absolutely secret. For if the technologies displayed in the mechanism had been widely taught to ancient man, then the Industrial Revolution would have happened before the birth of Christ. All over planet Earth, archaeological evidence of alien invasions exists, none more so than in ancient Iraq, the country which gave birth to the Sumerian and Babylonian empires. 6,000-year-old clay tablets tell of aliens invading from the stars who enslaved and genetically modified mankind. These alien gods were called the Anunnaki. There is evidence that alien invaders inspired ancient man to create electricity. Electricity was only discovered, or should we say rediscovered, in 1786 by the Italian Luigi Galvani. In 1936, Wilhelm Koenig discovered a clay vase in the vaults of the Baghdad Museum. The vase is thought to date from the Sumerian civilization, which predates the pharaohs of ancient Egypt. Inside this ancient clay vase was a copper cylinder with an iron rod running through the center, capped with oxidized lead. Koenig immediately realized that this was an ancient battery. Egyptologist Dr. Arne Eggebrecht discovered another so-called Baghdad battery during his expedition in Iraq. He poured grape juice into the vase, and a voltometer immediately registered half a volt of electricity. Where did this notion of electricity thousands of years ago come from? Was it inspired by the technology brought to planet Earth by the Anunnaki aliens? According to figurines and legends in ancient Iraq, the Anunnaki were reptilian humanoids. They are depicted in ancient Sumerian art as suckling human babies to their reptilian breasts.
Hawati Tawi, Tim Jaffa Kau, Tapin Mawf, Mu'f, Ta'if, Sem F, Menemenet F Nebet, Hayat Nebet, Henenet Nebet, Jedefuet F, Awet F, Haset, Samawu M Sanut.
3,500 years ago, during the reign of King Thutmose III, ancient Egypt was invaded by spherical UFOs which were described as circles of fire. According to ancient papyrus, these spherical UFOs filled the sky for several days. In his fascinating book, British author Matthew Deleuze shows photos of strange alien reptiles, some with the bodies of apes and heads of lizards. These can be found on the walls of the Temple of Hathor at Dendera in Egypt. Here we see reptilian humanoid creatures alongside pharaohs and bird-headed beings. Strange giant light bulbs, possibly some form of plasma beam weapon, can clearly be seen at the Temple of Hathor. Inside these strange devices there are serpents. This is possibly a pictorial message that this alien plasma technology was given to the elite of ancient Egypt by a serpent or reptilian race of aliens. like the Antikythera mechanism from ancient Greece and the Baghdad battery, this plasma technology was a closely guarded secret technology reserved for the use of the elite in ancient Egypt. Just as we see today, the royal political elite have secret underground bases harboring secret stealth technology and flying saucer type craft. More ancient than the Mayan kingdoms of Central America, older than ancient Greece, and predating the pharaonic dynasties of Egypt, the Sumerian Empire was formed more than 6,000 years ago, stretching from the Indus Valley region in Pakistan to the capital called Uruk. Sumeria is known as the cradle of civilization. It was here that white-skinned peoples from the Caucasus Mountains spread a worldwide cult of blood ritual and magic to the rest of the world. Two authors, Zecharia Sitchin and the British genius John Marco Allegro, who translated large parts of the Dead Sea Scrolls, studied ancient Sumerian clay tablets, which were discovered at Nineveh in the 1800s. These clay tablets told the history of the Sumerian Empire, an empire which was formed by invading aliens called the Anunnaki. Sumer's original name was Ki-en-Gir, which means the land of the kings with blazing rockets. The Sumerian clay tablets describe the Anunnaki aliens genetically manipulating mankind and creating a hybrid race of alien reptilian humans who became known as the Nephilim. The Nephilim are also known as the Elohim in the Bible. This was a genetically created race of rulers which had their human DNA mixed with that of the invading Anunnaki aliens. References to this race of alien hybrid rulers can be found in ancient texts from around the planet. The Sumerian Empire was the place where Zoroastrian, Hindu, and Judaic religions all began. The hybrid alien-human rulers became known as the Zazumin, Rephaim, and the Anakim. The world's most famous author on the subjects of the occult and human consciousness is David Icke. In his books, The Biggest Secret and Tales from the Time Loop, David Icke reports that blood sacrifice was an important part of ancient cultures in Babylon and also in Central America. In the legends of Babylon, the kingdom of ancient Iraq, which supplanted Sumeria, the drinking of human blood and the sacrifice of children was performed to please the alien gods who had invaded from the stars. The ancient ruling elite believed that drinking human blood allowed them to absorb human DNA from their ancestors. The Vatican continues this ancient blood-drinking ritual to this day with the symbolic drinking of the blood of Christ. David Icke claims blood-drinking rituals have been performed by members of the royal political elite throughout history. Have been performed by members of the royal political elite throughout history. Professor John Mack of Harvard University made a detailed study of people who claimed they had been abducted by aliens. In his book, John Mack studied abductees who said that the grey alien is actually a genetically engineered reptilian who invade planet Earth on a regular basis and collect human DNA as part of a plan to breed an alien-human hybrid race who will serve an extraterrestrial elite. According to Colonel Philip J. Corso, back-engineered alien technology is a jealously guarded secret by the rulers of mankind. The elite use the international network of secret societies to honor and control the government and military officials who work on secret projects for the elite. In fact, the oldest secret society known to mankind was formed in ancient Babylon and is called the Brotherhood of the Snake. The ruling elite of ancient Egypt fashioned their bodies so that they resembled aliens. All over ancient Egypt, serpents, snakes, and reptiles are associated with kingship and power over the human population. New kings had their bodies massaged with a special potion which contained crocodile fat. This was a worldwide cult of the crocodile, a reptilian species which has kept its original form since before dinosaurs walked on land. The crocodile is pictured alongside the Wangina creator spirits of Western Australia. Reptiles have always been associated with a race of hidden masters. Many occult traditions which are related to the birth of Freemasonry speak of the hidden masters. Some occult historians and authors claim that a group of hidden masters control world international Freemasonry. Ancient Masonic texts suggest that these hidden masters are in actual fact alien spirits from another world. Some Masonic texts say that the secrets of how to control and influence society and politics from behind the scenes was passed to the elite of Freemasonry from a race of reptilian aliens who invaded planet Earth and landed in ancient Iraq more than 12,500 years ago. The archaeological record tells us that alien beings have invaded planet Earth many, many times. All over the United States, ancient oral traditions of sky gods or aliens persist. At conferences organized by American shamans, legends of aliens who gave mankind knowledge of genetics are spoken about openly. Shaman elders speak of beings from the stars called the Bacti, who invaded planet Earth before even dinosaurs existed. Right at the point when planet Earth was just forming. The Hopi shaman elders make little dolls which represent spirits of their elders and spirits of the earth. They also make dolls which represent the spirits of the star gods. These dolls are called kachinas. According to shaman legends, the ancient Bacti genetically manipulated animals and created mankind. The Bacti aliens told early man that they were here to control the development of civilization, and that there were many other aliens who wanted to invade planet Earth. According to American shamans, the Bacti aliens have been known both as gods and devils throughout the evolution of man. shamans teach that the Bhakti are gods of the stars who have often destroyed evidence of man's real history in order to keep mankind ignorant and controllable. The oral traditions of the North American Indians teach us that the Bhakti star gods eventually lost control of planet Earth to another race of aliens, who were vicious reptiles with faces of dragons. The Temple of Hathor at Dendera in Egypt is dedicated to a deity who had dominion over our Milky Way galaxy. Scientists and astronomers now agree that there could be as many as 50,000 planets in our own Milky Way galaxy which can support intelligent life. On the ceiling of the temple, giant carvings depict star constellations, and on the walls, reptilian humanoid aliens are standing beside technological devices. Lizards can be clearly seen standing upright alongside the royal elite of ancient Egypt. Another common feature is the erectile serpent. This emblem is known as the Uranus. All the pharaohs wore cobra-shaped headdress featuring serpents and also vultures. All dinosaurs had reptilian genes. Contrary to what mainstream science teaches, all the dinosaurs did not die out in prehistoric times. They evolved into birds. Modern science has only just confirmed what the royal elite have known for thousands of years, that the reptilian genes of dinosaurs evolved into the various species of birds which we see to this day. Birds are actually avian reptiles, or feathered serpents. Birds share the same reptilian DNA as pterodactyls and biped raptor dinosaurs such as the Tyrannosaurus rex. Images of gods from the stars, symbolized by feathered serpents, can be found all over planet Earth. In ancient Mexico, there was a god-king known as Quetzalcoatl. The word Quetzal means bird, and Coatl means serpent. He was the god from the stars who brought civilization and knowledge of the cosmos to the people of Central America. Ancient texts from Yucatan, known as the Chilam Balam, tell us that the first inhabitants of the region were called the Chanes people, which means people of the serpent. They were ruled by a king called Itzamna. The word Itzam means lizard, and he is depicted as being half human and half serpent, just like the reptilian figures seen on the walls of the Temple of Hathor in Egypt. "5,000 years ago, the Olmecs of Central America carved statues of their god-kings seated within the protective coils of giant serpents. In these carvings, we see gods holding small buckets, identical to the situlas of ancient Sumeria. These buckets contained the so-called water of life, the genetic material from which the reptilian overlords created modern man as a slave race to serve them. In North America, at Sago Canyon in Utah, we again see erectile serpents flanking star beings. This is the exact same iconography as we find at the Temple of Hathor in Egypt. This suggests that knowledge of a race of reptilian aliens was accepted as fact in the distant past right across planet Earth. Perhaps the most ancient of all Chinese texts is the mysterious Yi Qing, which describes how humans were genetically modified by a goddess known as Nu Kua. She was a reptilian whose descendants became the emperors of China. Time and time again, we see rock carvings and ancient texts from all over planet Earth telling us that dragon-like reptilian humanoids invaded planet Earth and genetically created a race of hybrid alien human rulers. Many authors believe that the reptilian Anunnaki warriors of ancient Sumeria, who invaded the Caucasus Mountains, have secretly continued to control mankind via the worldwide network of secret societies which are loosely described as the Illuminati.